Well, today we introduce you to a gentleman whose family arrived in Oklahoma well before statehood. Eddie Warrior's great-grandmother came here along the Trail of Tears in 1836, a slave to the Muskogee Creek Nation. Born in 1902, Eddie Warrior was the last member of his family to be enrolled as a Creek freedman newborn, an Indian on paper, but a black man in the eyes of what was then a segregated state. But Eddie Warrior's life was defined more by the measure of his heart than it ever was the color of his skin. Today, we look back at his remarkable life and legacy through the eyes of three women, his daughter Edwina, his granddaughter Jackie, and great-granddaughter Lisa.
That's my all-time favorite, this one right here. When he's standing in his suit and fedora with the black Angus cows behind him.
For the women of the Warrior family, Eddie Warrior was a giant among men.
What he really wasn't.
That was natural for him.
He was a big man, a tall man, as the men in our family tended to be, and a very deep voice.
Standing over 6'4", he was known as Treetop on the playing field, a stature only equaled by the size of his heart.
But he was very gentle with us, very good with girls, because my mom, his first wife, died when I was 5, and I just sort of remember him getting up, because I would start to cry at night, missing my mom, but I would just remember that he'd get up at night when I was scared of the dark, and you know, try as best he could to comfort me.
And such kindness extended into his professional life. Always a man of the land, Eddie Warrior farmed for a living while also raising a young family and going to college.
And he was telling me about how, you know, with a young wife, a new wife, and a baby at home, that he actually slept in the dairy barn when he was on the campus at Langston, because he didn't have the money for the dorm.
After graduation, Warrior began teaching in the segregated schools of the 1920s, becoming a principal and a county supervisor.
He had to sort of talk to them about black history when there was nothing written down in textbooks about it, but to sort of like build up kids. And I think, and when I think about it, I thought that was so him. It was always about building up young people.
Warrior continued to touch young people's lives throughout his career, teaching skills as much for life as for a degree.
His basic philosophy about that is always learn how to do something with your hands. Like he supported 4-H clubs and things like that, because those are things you could always fall back on. And so he was really all about skills.
All the while earning the respect of fellow educators and gaining friendships across the state.
One thing my father pointed out to me was that I remember my grandfather was inducted into the African American Educators Hall of Fame probably several months back. And he was trying to explain to me that the importance, because he was like, Lisa, your granddad wasn't just a local educator. He said he had appointments by the governor, by governors that had kind of colorful past, and
Alfalfa Bill Murray.
and he was really a political person, and that's why I didn't really, the business part, you know, he just always seemed like he was about business. But what I saw him was like always the politician. I remember talking to Edwin, and I didn't know who people were, and it was like George and I and all these different people, but I didn't know who they were, you know, but they would be at our house or at his house, and you would just grow up around them.
Elected chairman of the first board of trustees of Indian capital Votech, Warrior was as at ease in the boardroom as he was the classroom, yet never forgot his roots.
We have a picture here of him in a suit in a pasture with some black Angus cows. That was the way he dressed all the time.
Checking cows in a fedora with a tie and a suit.
Even when he was sitting around the house, he'd be in suit pants, like she said, dress shirt, button like you have on, and with the sleeves cuffed up, and that was casual for him.
And dress shoes that would always be clean, very clean and polished.
Because he taught me how to shine them. And he used to give me $0.25 for shining his shoes.
But it was always groomed. And I remember him telling me, and when I was away working, it was like when times are the roughest, that's when you put on your best clothes, you pull yourself together, and you don't look like, you know, you're having problems like you can handle.
Warrior lived a busy professional life, but through it all, always made time for family.
And like the director, Lord Rader, would come down and they'd be meeting in my dad's office. And I just want to jump in here with this part, is that he always found time for us no matter what he was doing. Because if I knocked on the door and Mr. Rader was in there, he would say, "Who is it?" And I'd open the door and he'd say, "Oh, let's stop. That's my baby." You know, he always made sure that he recognized us. He was really, really about family.
Well, Eddie Warrior passed away in 1979, a full life filled with family and friends. Yet, even today, his legacy still lives on. Right behind me is the Eddie Warrior Correctional Unit, a female prison where inmates have the opportunity to turn around their lives with education and skills training, a fitting tribute to a man who spent his own life helping others help themselves.
Is a foot.
Inside this classroom at Eddie Warrior Correctional Facility, lives are changing for the better.
I have 3 kids and a husband. I have an 8-year-old son, a 7-year-old daughter, and a 19-month-old daughter.
And a drug conviction that has Amanda serving time. But time she's taken full advantage of.
And I got my GED here.
And a certification that will help her get a job upon release. Sheba is Amanda's tutor.
And I enjoy watching other people learn. I think that's the highlight for me, is that I like seeing women, especially, when they've been out there on drugs or alcohol or they have their addictions, coming in here and learning something that's going to be positive for them when they get out of prison.
Serving her own sentence, Sheba knows just how life-changing the skills learned inside this classroom can be because of how they've changed her own life.
Because my children are my motivation, I don't want my kids or their friends to end up in this position. It's horrible. I'm gonna cry. I fuss all the time about women doing something positive with yourself, getting your education. And there's so many out there on the yard that are older and that are afraid of failing. And they have drug addictions and they don't have family support. And so when they get in here, I fuss at them all the time. Just do it. Just do the work. Just learn it. Don't quit. Don't give up. Because we have good instructors that want to see them succeed.
Teaching not just technical skills, but success skills for life. Something Eddie Warrior's family believes he would be proud of.
We don't see it just as a prison. We see it as a place, like you say, where people are going back. I mean, they have debts to pay, but still while they're there, they're learning skills so that when they leave prison, that they can have something to, you know, make them employable or to, because they've had success there, some of them for the first time.
I think he would be very, very proud because he always wanted you to be equipped. No matter what, he wanted you to be equipped with something you'll be able to do to be successful in life, whether you're a good carpenter or whether you're a scholar or whether you do cosmetology. But he just wanted you to be equipped. So the Skills Center, to me, tells me that they're training these women so that when they get through being rehabilitated and they go back into society, they will be equipped with something. And I think that would make him very proud.